Today I want to take a few minutes and talk about, again, budgeting and the major breakdowns of the various categories within a budget. It's important that you, as the head of a school, understand your financial responsibility. And very simply put, your financial responsibility involves making sure that you're aware of every dollar that comes into your building and every dollar that goes out of your building. In order to do that, you have to have a clear understanding of the chart of accounts. You need to have a clear understanding of how the different parts of the budget are interrelated. So what we're going to do today is kind of talk through that a little bit. Show you some examples of the breakdown with revenues, the breakdowns regarding expenses, and then again looking at a budget and a real budget form that will allow you to see where the chart of accounts come in, the descriptions, and then trying to get you to think as you start looking at budgeting how your school fits into this. Now, in most jurisdictions, if you're associated with a Catholic diocese or archdiocese, what amounts to is you have a format that is already set for you. Your job is to make sure that you understand what those terms mean. And then it's your job to fill in the blanks, as you'll see in the slides coming up. So again, here's a little bit of a different take on the chart of accounts and the breakdown of the budget according to major categories. Now, I want to take a few minutes today and just talk a little bit about school budgets and the major categories and the chart of accounts that we've been talking about. And I want to share with you a PowerPoint and try to walk you through it. Now, what you see on the screen, it says the breakdown of income by the major categories. Now, it's really important that you look at this particular chart because what it says very clearly is that the total tuition income for this particular school, 88%. So that translates into 88% of all the income that the school receives will come from tuition. Very simply put, if you lose 1 or 2 or 3 students, this number here goes down. And it can go down significantly if you have a major issue at your school and you suddenly start losing students. But you'll see here other income. If your school offers particular programs, you might have after-school programs, student fees. In the high school, we had retreats. The retreat fees would be included in that. Other income, some schools have fees that they charge for books. That might go in there. Advancement income. In this particular school, it's 5%. 5% of the total budget. And it doesn't seem like very much, but if you take that 5% out, it can be significant. And again, when you look at this chart, right now, you'll say, oh, well, 5% isn't very much, 1%. But what's not shown here is what it translates into real dollars. That's where it's critically important. Now, the next slide that you see here is the expense breakdown by major categories. Now, what you'll see here, the largest by far in this particular school, salaries and benefits. 61% of all the money that you bring in goes to pay for salaries and benefits for your teachers, for your support staff, for your maintenance staff. Again, if you decide to increase the salaries by 1 or 2%, this number goes up. And if that goes up and your income doesn't change, or your income goes down, how do you pay for that? In this particular school, 5% of the entire budget is spent on maintaining the building and paying for utilities. Now here, you'll see Total general administrative expenses. Sometimes people say, well, what does that mean? Very simply, it means that it's the costs associated with running the administrative side of school. That means the computers, the software programs that you have, the printing, the mailings. If you have receptions and you have a public relations budget, that would go in there. If you send out a newsletter, that's where it would go. So those are the things that go into the general administrative expenses. Now, general administrative expenses, when you see it broken down like this, generally does not include salaries. Salaries are, again, down in this category here. Student services, if you have a guidance program, that's where student services. Financial aid, yes, you do have to account for financial aid or scholarships. In this school, you have to look at it and say, okay, what happened? It's very simple. 9% of the budget is allocated for financial aid. Now here, instructional expenses. What does that mean? Instructional expenses means how much does it cost us to run our classes? That means the printing, the copying for the classrooms. It means if you have bulletin boards and posters, if you have teachers printing off their own tests or quizzes, it means anything related to the instruction itself. It does not include salaries. Now here in this particular school, it's a high school, and athletic expenses are 4%. Now people say, well, wait a minute, athletic expenses are 4%, instructional expenses are 2%. Why the big variation? Well, truth be told, athletic expenses generally, when you talk about salaries, they're not included down here. They're included here because of the fact that they are stipends. They are considered stipends and not part of the regular contract that someone might have. Total advancement expenses, 1%. That means what does it cost us to raise the money, whether that's for an auction or a gala of some type or an annual fund. What is it costing? Now in this particular case, you see admissions, 0%. Does that mean that they're doing it for free? No. It means that it's less than 1% in this particular program, didn't record it. But it does cost some money to run the admissions program. Now, this is a chart that basically breaks down the instructional expenses by department. But it does it in such a way that, again, you look at it a little bit differently. You look at the dollars associated with it. So here, religious education, $2,400. English department, $34.91. Music department, $30,850. Library, $26,000. Art department, $18,000. Fitness and health, $61,000. So you get the general idea that there's some larger dollars, and you would say, well, wait a minute, how come music gets this and religious education only gets $24,000? Does that mean we value it less? No. The reality is that it costs less because what do we use to teach religion? We do it through textbooks. We do it through worship services. We do it through prayer services. We do it in a variety of ways. But what does it take to run those classes? Not as much. Now, when you start talking about music, you have to pay for instruments, repair of instruments. If you have particular uniforms. Media, well, that means the magazines cost money. You get books every year. All of those things. Art department, well, you have paints and paper and all the things associated with art. The same with science, $17,640. And you'll say, that's a lot of money. It is, but when you have to buy the materials to run a biology class, a physics class, a chemistry class, it's much more expensive than it is to run and to teach an English class. So that's really important. And again, you suddenly look at the dollars associated with it. And that's important to look at. Now, why do I mention that? Because I think it's really important that we look at the way we prepare our budgets. And this is something that schools do quite frequently. They look at their budget, not just from 1 year, but from a 5-year period. Now, in this particular case, it was from a budget period of 2012 all the way to 2019. And when you suddenly start looking at revenues, you look at breaking it down. Over here, what you'll see right there, let me mark it up. If I go right there, you'll see that number. That's the account number. Okay, why is that important? Because I need to know, as the head of the school, where every dollar is going and every dollar comes in. In this particular case, the tuition in parish. Okay, you put the number of what was the number that you'd put. If you were expecting $1 million, it would simply be your tuition times the number of students. If you charge differently for out of parish, you'd see that. Some schools charge tuition for non-Catholics. Then you see tuition and fees from prior years. In some cases, that's considered bad debt that's carried over. But you'll see scholarships that are there, registration fees, course fees. Now, in some cases, if you're taking a Spanish class or you're taking a music class in some schools, you have a special fee. You'll see a testing fee, book fees, other fees. Now, if your school has a nursery school, the nursery school tuition comes there, pre-kindergarten tuition, after-school fees. Then it goes all into this category here, so you know exactly what you're doing. So when you are preparing a budget, you'll see over in this left-hand column, these are the account numbers. And you'll see here what your budget is. You decide that. You'll see things like tuition assistance. You categorize that in this section here. If you're getting income from parents' organizations, you'll see the account number there. If you have an alumni association, student fundraising, special fundraising, each one of those accounts should have a separate code. Why? Because you need to know what money is coming in. If you suddenly start bundling that all as one development operations, you lose track of, well, what are we really earning from that? Sometimes when you look at these activities, they're not cost effective. Sometimes people have gifts and donations that are made. What do you anticipate that? Memorials, rental of facilities, what are those things? And then again, publications, in this school, athletic donations. So you simply look at all of those, and then when you suddenly start breaking it down, administrative salaries, you need to break it down by religious. If you have religious in your school, their salaries are less than everyone else's in most cases, not always. What is your lay salary? What is your clerical salaries religious? Clerical salaries lay. Accrued sick pay. Oftentimes people say, well, we have to account for that because we need to make sure that we have enough money to pay for substitute teachers. What is that amount? Then you have advertising and, publicity. And you go down, and you can see as we scroll down here, all of these different items. And we'll talk about depreciation a little bit later. But again, every area has their own code from the chart of accounts. You'll see it right there. And then you'll, again, see the amount that you've budgeted. Your job as the administrator is to make sure that you stay in line with that budget. And if for some reason that budget gets out of whack, what does that really mean? So you suddenly start looking at the budgets, and you suddenly look at chart of accounts, and you'll see the description here. Why is that important? And you need to make sure that you understand what goes into each one of those accounts. Because if they are put in the wrong place, that will definitely mess up your budget. Now, in this particular budget, they look at items such as baptisms. Why is that important? Because that will hopefully help you make some judgments in the future about what percentage of the children that are baptized in your parish actually go to your elementary school. What is your projected enrollment? And you need to project your enrollment for this year. And you look out. And when you do a long-range budget, again, what do you anticipate your tuitions being? All of these things go into designing your budgets. But I wanted to at least share with you the idea of what the budget actually looks like. The idea of the chart of accounts, which is this number here, the description that's here, and then ultimately the amount that's budgeted. Again, I hope this makes a little bit more sense to you. And if you have any questions, as always, please feel free to contact me. Again, hope you have a good day. If you have questions, please make sure you ask. That's how we all learn. Thanks and have a good day.